Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go. Her demeanor was the first thing that tipped me off. You see, our daughter Joanne had come home in tears, leaning on Linda and me for comfort. She admitted to being unfaithful to her husband, Jack, and now she wanted me, her father, to step in and persuade Jack to forgive her and give their marriage another chance. Joanne reasoned that nearly 90% of men had been unfaithful to their wives at some point, and Jack probably wasn't an exception. Have you ever actually caught him doing anything unfaithful? I asked. He is attractive, and women like to be around him, but that doesn't mean he's cheated. What on earth made you decide to betray him? It wasn't intentional, Joanne admitted. We were at that party, and Jack had to leave early to deal with an issue at the factory. I had a bit more to drink than I should have, and when he said he wasn't coming back, he told me to get a ride home with one of my friends. And the friend that took me home was Eric Turner, and he kept telling me how much he adored me. He started kissing me, and when we got to our driveway, he started feeling me up. It felt good, so I let him, and I guess I was a little drunk. I didn't know Jack was home already. The next thing I knew, Jack had flung the car door open and saw me without clothes. I was sitting on Eric's lap, and she stopped there, sobbing uncontrollably. John, if you think I'm going to side with you or interfere, I'm not. I thought your mother and I taught you better than to cheat on your husband. Your mother and I have been married for 30 years. And if she did that to me, I'd toss her out. It would rip me apart, but I feel I had to, just to keep my self-respect. Come on, Daddy. You must have been tempted in the last 30 years, haven't you? Sure. Several times tempted, that is. But there has to be mutual respect between loved ones. Do you think your mother has ever gone out and been unfaithful to me? There was total silence. I hadn't looked at Linda while I was berating Joanne. The silence brought me around, so I was staring at my wife. She was pale and looking at the floor. Linda, look at me. She couldn't. I got up and left the room, going into the kitchen. Joanne was still crying when she came to get her coat. Joan, did you know your mother has been unfaithful to me? Now, Joanne wouldn't look at me, so I could conclude she probably did know. Like mother, like daughter. Get out of here. I know just how Jack feels. I hope he kicks you out for good. I went back into the living room, and this time Linda looked at me. I'm sorry, David. Can you forgive me? I think you're sorry I found out. Evidently, Joanne knows what you've done. Can you imagine how I feel about that? Every time she came over, she probably looked at me with pity. Well, I know about it now. So, all we have to figure out is what is going to happen next. Can't we go on just like we have been? I still love you. I can't. There are too many who know about it. You, Joanne, probably Jack, your lover, and all of those he most likely bragged to about getting into your pants. No, Linda. I admit I've been happy with you, but I don't see where I could ever be again. You better get an attorney to represent you. I'll try to be as amicable as possible through all of this. If you could read my mind right at this minute, it would make you afraid of me. I walked upstairs and started packing a suitcase. When I came back down, Linda was still sitting where I left her. Don't you want me to tell you about it and how it happened? No, I don't. You must have been willing, because I know you don't drink, so you can't even use the same excuse that Joanne has. I'll have my lawyer call you, so you can tell him who you have retained. God, Linda, I admit I have been happy with you, but I don't see where I could ever be again. You better tell Jason. John most likely will, but he'd better hear it from you. Boy, is he going to be hit hard when he finds out both his sister and his mother have been unfaithful. I left before Linda could say anything more. I sat in the motel room thinking back over my life. I suppose I had an easy time of living up until now. My folks were upper middle class, so I had been able to get a good education. People always said I was too serious, but they knew where they stood with me. Not that I'm overly righteous, but I didn't feel that way about Linda's situation. Marriage, to me, was a solemn and serious affair. When I took those vows, I meant to keep them, and I believed everyone else should too. What made Linda think she didn't have to? She was a grade school teacher. Chris, she taught kids to follow rules every day, punishing them when they didn't. This guy she didn't deny having an affair with must be something. Did I want to know about him? That was a definite no. I might find out he had a bigger personality, treated her better, or that he gave her something I didn't. I didn't want to know. All the time we had been together, I had thought of Linda first in everything, including in bed. My thoughts turned directly to her. She was an attractive woman minus 49 years old, toned, groomed. I kept myself that way too. Neither of us would have any trouble finding another companion. Well, wait. She had already found hers. It was only me who'd be looking. As I sat there, still thinking about her, I decided that I didn't feel the same about her as I did 2 hours ago. It was a loss and left a hole in my heart, but I hoped that would close in time. The love I had for her would last for a while. It just wasn't as strong as it had been. Jason and Joanne, our kids, would pressure me to stay married to their mother. Maybe not, though. Joanne at least knew of her mother's affair. Maybe she thought Linda was traveling a better road away from me rather than with me. Well, I would deal with this as I did everything else. Wait, see what developed, and choose the best alternative. I called Alex, my attorney, Monday morning and told him I wanted a divorce. He questioned me extensively, as he was not only my lawyer but also a friend of ours. I told him I didn't have proof. He said whoever Linda chose for a lawyer would advise her to fight the divorce. There's no way Linda could get my love back, no matter how hard she fights for it, I said. I'll be fair in any settlement. Split everything down the middle. Later, my secretary took calls from Alex, Jason, Joanne, and Linda. I told her to have them call the motel in the evening if they wanted to talk to me. When I arrived that night, Jason, Joanne, and Linda were waiting. Dad, can we talk in your room? Mom knows she's wrong, but she's hoping you can get past it. We can talk, but she's going to be disappointed. We went up to my room. Did Jack take you back, Joanne? I asked her. I begged him to, and he said I could come back, but I'd have to stay in the guest room until he makes up his mind. He won't sleep with me either. Tears welled up in her eyes. Well, good luck. If you beg hard enough and really intend to remain faithful, he might. Linda perked up at what I said to our daughter, but I dashed her hopes. You made a mistake, Joanne. Maybe Jack can live with that. I can't though, Linda. I'm just not made that way. David, if you come home and I sleep in the spare room, can't we resolve this? I haven't made up my mind yet. First, who did you have an affair with? You don't know him, so you don't need to know his name. Where did you meet him? At the teachers' convention. When? 27 years ago. How many times have you been in his bed? I'm not going to answer that. Haven't I told you enough? I admit I had sex with him. What more can I say? I stared at her, then the thought struck me. There was a teachers' convention every year, and Linda went to them all. So, you've had sex every year for the last 27 years with him at the convention. Is that right? Her head shot up at that. Not every year. If you must know, I missed 2. It looks like I'm going to miss this year too. I'm so ashamed of all of this. I didn't realize what it looks like until it's been brought out into the open. David, come on. You were never hurt by this. Remember the great sex we had when I got home from the convention. Both Jason and Joanne were conceived during those sessions. I felt like she had stabbed me, or they were conceived a few days before you got home. That looks like a distinct possibility. Her face paled. We took precautions. It did not happen. Jason and Joanne are yours. You have to admit I have reason to doubt you. Right now, I don't even know why I'm talking to you. I've got a cheater for a wife, and you want me to forgive and forget. Bullshit. I turned to Jason. I hope you are my son. I don't know what I'd do if you aren't. What about me, Daddy? I'm your kid too. I know I am, Joanne said, her voice trembling. Well, why don't you act like it then? Joanne, you know I love you, but what you've done to Jack breaks my heart. I'm sorry, Daddy. Please talk to Jack and make him forgive me. I promise I'll be true to him forever. Okay, Pumpkin. I'll talk to him. You 2 kids go along now. I want to talk to your mother. I'll see that she gets home. I got a hug from Joanne and a handshake from Jason. Linda sat very still on the bed, watching them leave. Once their car disappeared from the parking lot, I turned to my wife. They're great kids. I hope Joanne does what she says she will. 2 cheaters in the same family would be too much. Even if the kids aren't mine, I love them. David, stop calling me a cheater. 3 nights out of a year does not make me one. What am I supposed to call you? Maybe a loving wife who only cheats a little. How would that be? You might as well take me home if all you're going to do is call me names. We've always been able to talk without being nasty to each other. Okay, I'll try, but you have to know how I feel about this and realize how much you've hurt me. I didn't realize before, but I'm beginning to. I was crushed when Joanne came and told me what she had done. She and Jason knew about me. I thought her knowing about me would keep her from doing the same thing. How long have they known? 2 years ago, they came to the convention to visit. They found a man in my room, and I couldn't cover up what we'd been doing. I made them promise to never tell you. As far as they know, I haven't had him in my room since. What should I know about this man? If you've been cheating with him for 27 years, he must be really something. David, I was 22 when I met him. Teachers flirt just the same as any other group. He and I were flirting, and it got out of hand. It happened, and we had sex. This occurred the last night of the convention that year. I came home, and you and I had wild sex. Shortly after that, I found out I was pregnant with Joanne. The next year, I didn't go to the convention because Joanne was a baby. The year after that, I spent all 3 nights with him. I missed my monthly after I came home, and Jason was born. I honestly don't know who the father is, but if you saw him, you'd know both are yours. I didn't go to the convention the year Jason was born, but I have been with him every year since. Why? What is the attraction? It isn't the actual being with him. It's the excitement as convention time gets closer. I'm going to be doing something that nobody would approve of. Nobody would expect it of me either. You didn't. The kids didn't. They think I stopped when they caught me. Chris, last year I almost went wild thinking you might bust down the door because they squealed on me to you. I stared at her, this woman I thought I knew so well. She had just told me that I didn't have all of her mind, her thoughts, her body. With me out of the picture, maybe it would be 10 times more exciting for her. Let's see, I said coldly. You've been in bed with him 75 times in the last 27 years. You want me to forget all of that? Come on, get your things. I'll take you home. This is the end of us, isn't it? You are a good man, David. I'm truly sorry I haven't lived up to your expectations. You wouldn't know what it's like unless you've been in the same situation. I'm sorry you've missed that too. It makes you so much more alive. Linda was killing whatever love I had left for her every time she opened her mouth. I looked at her with disgust. It didn't seem to bother her. Maybe she felt she wasn't a cheater. I could think of other words, but none of them mattered anymore. I talked to Jack about Joanne. I told him I couldn't advise him on what to do. Once trust is gone in your wife, you might never get it back, I said. Then I told him about Linda. If she had come and confessed after sleeping with the man the first time, I might have kept her and tried to rebuild the trust. After 27 years of her cheating, it's impossible for me to even consider it. We got drunk that night, and it was me who half carried him home. He slept on the floor, and I slept on his couch. Joanne must have called her mother to cry on her shoulder because Linda showed up for breakfast in the morning. She lit into me, having a screaming fit about how I wasn't helping to fix things between the young couple. I just got up and left without saying a word. Weeks went by. Jack eventually let Joanne back into his life. I was glad for them. A few months later, Joanne told me she was going to have a baby. Both she and Jason kept close watch over me. They were uncertain whether I was truly their father or not, but it made me feel good that they wanted me to be the one. We grew closer. Jason found a girlfriend, a lovely young woman. They made a cute couple, and they were deeply in love. I looked forward to her being my daughter-in-law someday. As for Linda, I saw her rarely. Whenever we met, I went out of my way to be civil to her. Jason later told me she didn't attend the teachers' convention that year. It doesn't matter to me either way, I replied. Linda and I split our assets fairly during the divorce. The house where I had spent so many happy years was sold. I didn't bid on it. I thought living there would only remind me that when Linda was with me, her mind might have been elsewhere, thinking about him. Joanne and her mother talked often. One day, Joanne revealed to me that Linda's lover was also married with a family. They had made a pact to never contact each other during the year, saving their meetings exclusively for the annual convention. It was a twisted arrangement, but it explained everything. Despite the divorce, there were times when the pain of Linda's betrayal came back to haunt me. We had 3 restaurants we frequented as a couple over the years. The first time I saw Linda there with another man was crushing. I managed to speak politely when introduced to her date, but it was an uncomfortable situation. When the evening ended, I was glad to escape. Oddly, I hated her more in that moment than I had throughout the entire divorce process. It was different, however, when I took a teacher she worked with to dinner at the same restaurant. We were seated next to Linda, who was dining with a female friend. She couldn't handle the situation as gracefully as I had. She left midway through her meal, disappearing into the powder room and never coming back. Over time, we stopped crossing paths in public. At family gatherings, we eventually became at ease with each other. But the memory of her infidelity lingered like a shadow, never fully gone. One day, my life took an unexpected turn. I was at the grocery store behind a teenage boy who was buying 2 candy bars. I watched him pocket a prepaid phone card without paying for it. "Son, you have to run that card through the checkout," I said. "Give it to me, and I'll pay for you." "Wait for me, and I'll walk out with you." The boy hesitated but waited for me outside. That's how I met Brian Raymond. When we got outside, I handed him the phone card. "Tell me about it. You were going to steal that card." "Why?" Brian's face turned red. "I know better, but Mom is in the hospital with a broken leg. I wanted to talk to her. I don't have any money to go see her, and I thought I could call her." "What hospital?" "Mercy Hospital. It's on the other side of town. My sister cries every night because we know Mom is worried about us, but we have no way to see or talk to her." "How old are you and your sister?" "I'm 16 and Wendy is 14. She's really afraid of staying alone, but so far, no one has bothered us. Mom won't be home for another week or more, from what we've heard." These kids were clearly up against it. "Where is your father?" I asked. "He was killed in Iraq. Mom is waiting for the government to send us money. I just hope it comes before we lose our apartment. Would you like me to take you and your sister to see your mother?" "I can't tonight, but I can tomorrow if you want." "I don't know. Mom doesn't like us talking to strangers." "Why don't you call her? You can tell her my name. I'll even give you my wallet so you can see who I am." "Here, take my cell phone. It's already programmed for 911. If you think I'm doing anything wrong, just hit the button. I really want to help you." Brian hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, I guess I can trust you. We have to go to Aspen Grove Road to get my sister. She has the door barricaded. I wish we didn't have to live there. Mom broke her leg falling through the porch. It's a compound break, and she's worried about how she's going to pay her hospital bill." We drove to find his sister, Wendy, just as Brian said we would. She had the door locked and was terrified when we arrived. Brian explained that I was going to help them see their mom. Wendy was a shy, sweet girl, just beginning to bud into womanhood. I couldn't help but think of Jason and Joanne at that age, wondering how they would have coped in such a dire situation. Probably not well. The 2 kids were quiet on the way to the hospital. I asked who rented the apartment to them, and Brian said some management company handled it. He didn't know who owned the building. At the hospital, we found their mother's room, but I stayed outside until Brian explained to her how they were able to visit. After a few minutes, she asked to meet me. That's how I came face to face with Kathy Raymond. Kathy appeared to be about 10 years younger than me. Lying in the hospital bed, she had an air of quiet dignity despite her evident struggles. Her raven black hair was being combed by Wendy as she talked. "Thank you so much," Kathy said. "I worry about Brian and Wendy every moment I'm stuck here, unable to do anything. Wendy's so scared living where we do. It's the worst place imaginable. I'm David Collins, I said. I have an empty camp that's livable and in a better section of town. It's rustic, but has everything you need. It sleeps 8 people comfortably, with 2 bunk rooms and a kitchen-living room combo. My family uses it as a getaway. You're welcome to stay there until you get back on your feet. How much would it cost? I don't have any money, and I always pay my debts. It'll take me forever to pay off the hospital as it is. Nothing. I don't have many expenses, and helping you won't hurt me at all. If you want, I can keep track of what I spend, and we can discuss it when you're in a better financial position. Why are you doing this for us? She asked, her voice filled with suspicion but not malice. To be honest, I don't know, I admitted. When Brian told me about your situation, I decided to help. I raised 2 kids of my own, and I'd like to see yours take the right path. Kathy studied me for a moment. You said you were divorced. Is there anything in your past I should worry about with my kids being so young? You're asking if I'm a pervert, I said, smiling slightly. No, I'm not. You can call anyone in my family. They'd tell you I'm too straight, if anything. That includes my ex-wife. After a moment, she nodded. Brian and Wendy can give you our decision after visiting ours. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Brian and Wendy joined me just as visiting hours were ending. Brian spoke first, his voice subdued but steady. Mom wants to talk to you again before we leave. I went back to Kathy's room. She was sitting up, her eyes tired but resolute. Mr. Collins, I'm putting my trust in you. Brian told me everything. If you can find a safe place for my kids and help them stay in school, I will be very grateful. It's settled then, I said. Tonight, I'll show them the cabin so they can see where they'll be staying. Then I'll get them something to eat, probably fast food as it's late. They can stay at my apartment tonight. Wendy can have the guest room, and Brian can take the couch. They'll call you before they go to bed so you won't worry. That sounds perfect. Thank you, Kathy said, her voice trembling slightly. I feel like I've got no choice but to trust you, but for some reason, I don't feel uneasy about it. Good. I'll make sure they call you before they sleep, I replied, taking her hand briefly in farewell. That night, Brian and Wendy saw the cabin. Wendy's face lit up when she realized it was in a safe neighborhood, far from the dangers of Aspen Grove Road. They chose a few things they'd like to move in, and then I took them to my apartment. Wendy called her mom before going to bed, reassuring her that everything was fine. The next morning, I looked at the 2 of them. You need better clothes for school. Let's stop by Target and get you a change of clothes before I enroll you. They both looked hesitant, but I waved off their protests. At the store, Wendy picked a modest blue skirt and white blouse, while Brian chose a new pair of jeans and a simple t-shirt. By 10 a.m., I had them enrolled in a nearby school. The process was surprisingly smooth, with no objections from the administrators. Later that day, I called Alex, my attorney. Alex, I need your help. I need to know who owns the slum tenement on Aspen Grove Road where the Raymonds live. Alex laughed. Why, David? Are you about to crusade for justice in the city's roughest neighborhood? I'm just trying to help a widow and her kids. Once you find the owner, threaten them with a lawsuit unless they pay Kathy's hospital bill. If that doesn't work, tell them I'll have the city inspectors condemn the building. They can decide which option is cheaper. Got it? Alex replied, clearly amused. Anything else? I may also need help speeding up her late death benefits from the government. But let's deal with the hospital bill first. That afternoon, I picked up Brian and Wendy from school. They were excited, both about the safe new place they'd soon call home and the idea that their mother wouldn't have to worry as much. We headed to Aspen Grove Road to pack their things, using garbage bags since we didn't have enough boxes. As we carried their belongings to the car, a group of rough-looking youths approached. I heard Wendy scream. She was struggling as one of them tried to force her into a beat-up old car. Another had Brian pinned to the ground, punching him. There was a baseball bat by the door jamb. I grabbed it and ran. The first swing connected with the thug's ribs, and I heard a sickening crack. The next blow glanced off another attacker's head, dropping him. Wendy's abductor turned to flee, but I swung with all my might, smashing his knee. A fourth assailant jumped on my back, pounding at me. Wendy, disheveled and terrified, was trying to cover herself after losing her top in the scuffle. I fought the fourth off as the others scrambled into their car. One of them fired a shot as they sped away. I felt the bullet hit my side, and I went down. Wendy screamed for help, sobbing uncontrollably. Minutes later, police and paramedics arrived. Wendy was still clutching me, her tears soaking my shirt. She only let go when the paramedics assured her I would survive. I told the police to call Jason or Jack to retrieve the kids in my car. Then I passed out. When I woke, I was in the hospital. Joanne was sitting beside me, tears in her eyes. "Daddy, you're insane. What were you thinking, going down there alone?" "How are Brian and Wendy?" I asked weakly. "They're fine. Jason and Jack took care of them." "But what about you? You could have died." I managed a faint smile. "I'll be fine. Just make sure the kids are okay." Joanne shook her head. "Wendy and Brian are okay, but you scared them to death. Wendy keeps saying you're her hero. She wouldn't leave until she knew you were going to be all right. Jason took her and Brian to see their mom after they left here. Wendy cried the whole way." As Joanne spoke, Wendy came into the room with cautious steps, her eyes red from crying. She walked up to me and leaned down, planting a kiss on my cheek. "Mr. Collins, I'm so sorry you got hurt because of me. Those boys have been after me for months, but I never thought they'd actually try to grab me. You saved me, and I'll never forget it." "You're safe now, Wendy, and that's all that matters," I said, my voice hoarse. "Did my family take care of you?" "They're good people." "Yes. Joanne stayed with me last night, and Brian stayed with Jason. Your son and daughter are amazing, just like you," she said with a shy smile. Jason walked in next, his face serious. "Dad, what the hell were you thinking? You know better than to go into that neighborhood alone. You should have called me or someone else." "I wasn't planning to fight a gang, Jason," I replied. "I just wanted to help the kids move their things. Things got out of hand." Jason sighed heavily. "Well, you're lucky to be alive. For what it's worth, the guy who shot you died in a car crash while trying to escape the police. The others are in custody with broken bones. Thanks to you. I've never seen you like this, Dad. Even when you and Mom were splitting up, you never got physical." I didn't want to fight Jason, but I couldn't let them hurt Wendy. I guess I did what I had to. Jason shook his head, clearly bewildered. "Well, it's all over now. Try to stay out of trouble, okay?" Brian came in next, standing stiffly at the foot of my bed. "Mr. Collins, I called 911 before they knocked me down. Was that the right thing to do?" "You did exactly the right thing, Brian," I assured him. "You and Wendy fought as hard as you could, and it paid off. Your mom's going to be proud of both of you." The hospital staff came in, announcing that I was ready to be moved to a regular room. By then, I was exhausted. After I was settled, I had time to think about everything that had happened. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had truly made a difference. The next morning, I woke up to a less than appetizing breakfast and a doctor explaining my condition. The bullet had shattered part of a rib, which had to be removed. Thankfully, there were no serious internal injuries. I was told I'd be on a regular diet by dinner and could expect a full recovery. The police arrived to take my statement, assuring me there would be no charges against me despite the injuries I'd inflicted on the attackers. A reporter followed, handing me a copy of the morning paper. The headline read, "Hometown Man Saves Teenage Girl from Abduction or Worse." The article was extensive, mostly quoting Wendy's emotional retelling of the events. It painted me as a hero, though I didn't feel like one. There were crime statistics about the neighborhood, interviews with witnesses and photos, a shot of Wendy hugging me while I was unconscious, one of Brian being treated by a medic, and a montage of the apprehended attackers. As I handed the paper back, I said, "I just saw a chance to help someone and took it. Maybe someone else will be inspired to do the same." Later that day, there was a knock on the door. Kathy Raymond entered in a wheelchair, her leg in a cast. She smiled warmly as she rolled closer. "Mr. Collins, when you set out to protect me and my kids, you go all out, don't you? I don't even know how to thank you." You don't have to, I replied. Just focus on getting better. Your kids need you. Kathy's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. I'm so glad we trusted you. You've done more for us than anyone has in a long time. Another knock interrupted us, and Linda walked in looking concerned. David, how are you? She asked softly. Without waiting for an answer, she leaned down and kissed me on the lips. Damn you, David. If you're going to save the world, can't you pick safer ways to do it? I laughed weakly, despite the pain. Linda, meet Kathy Raymond. It's her kids I was helping when this happened. Kathy, this is my ex-wife, Linda. The two women exchanged polite greetings, though I could sense the tension. Kathy eventually excused herself, leaving Linda and me alone. David, you've always had a way of surprising me, Linda said. But this is something else. I hope you know how proud the kids are of you. Even Jason can't stop talking about it. I nodded, appreciating her words but eager to change the subject. So, how's life at school? Linda gave me a half smile. Same as always, but seeing you here, it makes me think about what we had. I should let you rest, though. Take care, David. As she left, I couldn't help but reflect on how far our lives had diverged, and how much they still intersected. The next few days brought a whirlwind of visitors, phone calls, and unexpected developments. Kathy wheeled herself into my room frequently, sometimes accompanied by Brian and Wendy. Each time, I felt their gratitude and warmth, and it made the pain of recovery a little more bearable. Joanne and Jason visited regularly as well, clearly concerned about me. Joanne was especially attentive, bringing small gifts and updates about her pregnancy. She kept repeating how proud she was of me, though her eyes betrayed worry every time she looked at my bandages. On the third day, Alex, my attorney, stopped by with good news. The management company for the Aspen Grove Road building has agreed to pay Kathy's hospital bill. She'll need to sign an agreement not to sue and will be responsible for her own therapy, but that's the best we can get. That's excellent, Alex, I said. I'll let her know. Her things have already been moved to the cabin, so she can put all of this behind her. Alex raised an eyebrow. What's your connection to her, David? Are you just helping out a widow in need, or is there something more to it? I'm just helping her and her kids. They remind me of Jason and Joanne at that age, that's all. Alex chuckled. You're a good man, but mark my words, Kathy's going to fall for you. And honestly, I think you'll fall for her too. Just don't let Linda stir up trouble. I sighed, knowing he wasn't entirely wrong. Kathy and I are friends, nothing more. As for Linda, I don't think she'll interfere. She seems to have her own life now. Well, good luck. If you need anything else, call me. When Alex left, I told Kathy about the hospital bill being taken care of. She was overjoyed, and in a moment of pure gratitude, she kissed my face all over, her laughter and tears blending into a beautiful chaos. Stop it, Kathy, I said, embarrassed. I can't help it, she replied with a grin. You've done so much for me and my kids. How can I not show you how much it means to me? That was the first time I realized how close we'd become. Her warmth and optimism were infectious, and the more time I spent with her, the more I looked forward to seeing her. By the time I was discharged from the hospital, Kathy had transitioned to an air cast, allowing her to move around with more ease. She and the kids were settled comfortably in the cabin, and they insisted I come to stay with them for a while as I recovered. Brian and Wendy treated me like family, doting on me during my stay. Brian's cooking experiments became a daily delight, and Wendy always greeted me with a hug and a kiss on the cheek. They were good kids, full of potential, and I felt privileged to be part of their lives, even in a small way. Kathy, too, was a joy to be around. She had a way of making everything seem lighter, even the lingering pain in my side. One evening, as we watched TV together, she fell asleep leaning against me. I hesitated, but eventually wrapped an arm around her to keep her comfortable. When she woke, she looked up at me with a soft smile. It's nice waking up like this, she said. I hope it didn't bother you. Not at all, I replied, my heart racing. As the days passed, I found myself falling for Kathy. She was kind, funny, and full of life. a stark contrast to the rigid control I had always maintained over myself. For the first time since my divorce, I felt the stirrings of love. When I returned to my apartment, I found myself missing the cabin. Brian's calls about his latest recipes and Wendy's excitement over her babysitting jobs became the highlights of my day. Kathy, too, kept in touch, her laughter and warmth shining through even over the phone. One evening, Linda called unexpectedly. "David, can we talk?" "Sure. Is something wrong?" "No, I just wanted to catch up. I'll bring a bottle of wine and some cheesecake. Let's have dinner together." I agreed, though I suspected there was more to her visit than catching up. That night, Linda arrived looking radiant, her eyes filled with a mix of nostalgia and determination. We shared a meal, reminiscing about old times, until she finally spoke her mind. "David, I need to know if I made a mistake 27 years ago," she said bluntly. "I know I hurt you, but have to understand if what I did was worth it." "What are you asking, Linda?" "I want to make love to you," she said, her voice steady. "I want to see if the spark we had is still there. If it isn't, I'll know I didn't make a mistake. But if it is, I'll know I threw away something precious." I stared at her, unsure of how to respond. Reluctantly, I agreed. But as we tried to reconnect, I couldn't stop thinking about her betrayal. The intimacy felt hollow, and I eventually gave up. Later, as we lay side by side, Linda sighed. "I was wrong, wasn't I? There's no spark left between us." "No, Linda," I replied quietly. "There isn't. We've both moved on in our own ways." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Then I'll call Gary. He called me last week for the first time in decades. His wife passed away, and he wants to reconnect." "Do what makes you happy, Linda," I said. "We've both earned the right to find peace." Linda wiped her eyes and gave me a weak smile. "Thank you, David, for everything. For the years we had and for being honest with me now. I hope you find what makes you happy too." She kissed my cheek and left quietly, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Strangely, I felt no bitterness, only relief. Our chapter together had finally come to a close, and I could move forward without the weight of unresolved feelings. The next few weeks were a mix of healing and rediscovery. I spent more and more time at the cabin with Kathy and her kids. Brian's cooking experiments had turned into a serious hobby, and he even begun selling baked goods to neighbors. Wendy was blossoming, her confidence growing with every babysitting job she took on. The two of them had settled into their new school, earning good grades and making friends. Kathy, too, was thriving. Her cast was gone, and she moved around with ease, her energy and warmth lighting up every room she entered. I found myself drawn to her more each day, and it was becoming harder to ignore my feelings. One evening as we sat together after dinner, Kathy turned to me, her expression serious. "David, I need to ask you something," she said. "Are you staying here with us because you feel sorry for me and the kids? Or is there something more?" I hesitated, caught off guard by her directness. "Kathy, She cut me off, placing a hand on mine. "I don't want to assume anything. But I think you care about me, about us. And I need to know if it's real." I looked into her eyes, seeing both vulnerability and hope. "It's real, Kathy," I said softly. "I've been trying to deny it, but I can't. I care about you, more than I should maybe. But I don't want to rush you or the kids into anything you're not ready for." Kathy smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "I've been waiting for you to say that. David, I care about you too. More than I thought possible after everything that's happened. The kids already see you as part of our family. I do too." In that moment, the distance between us dissolved. I leaned in and we kissed, a tender, heartfelt connection that felt like the start of something new and beautiful. Our relationship blossomed over the next few months. Kathy and I grew closer, and her kids quickly came to see me as a father figure. Brian sought my advice on everything from school projects to recipes, and Wendy often confided in me about her dreams and worries. One evening, I proposed to Kathy. It wasn't a grand gesture, just the two of us sitting by the fireplace, talking about the future. When I asked her to marry me, Her face lit up with a joy that I'd never forget. "Yes, David. 1,000 times yes," she said, wrapping her arms around me. 2 months later, we were married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Joanne and Jason stood by my side, their support unwavering. Brian and Wendy were ecstatic, overjoyed to see their mother happy again. As for Linda, she had married Gary and seemed content. She called me one evening, her voice bright and full of excitement. "David, please tell the kids their mother is now Mrs. Gary Brown," she said. "Unhappy, David. Really happy. Thank you for everything." Her happiness brought closure to what had once been a painful chapter in my life. With Kathy by my side and a new family to care for, I finally felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Looking back, I realized that life has a way of bringing us full circle. Sometimes we lose what we thought we couldn't live without, only to find something even better waiting for us. Kathy and her kids gave me a second chance at happiness, and for that, I would always be grateful. The past still lingered in memories, but it no longer haunted me. It had shaped me, made me stronger, and led me to where I was now, a place of love, peace, and hope for the future. Life isn't perfect. I once told Kathy, but sometimes it gives you exactly what you need. She smiled, taking my hand. And sometimes it gives you even more than that.